I'm talking about joy today. It is one of my favorite subjects, and I feel that it's something that I've had in my life most of my life, but there's been some times where it's like all the joy left my life. And so I want to kind of talk about how to get more joy and what causes us to not have joy in us, because that's where it is and that's where it comes from essentially. So every one of us is created with joy as their true nature. Little babies are just in the moment, and their expression of joy is so real, so live. And unless there's some kind of fear, pain, or distress that is distracting them from their joy, they are in a joyful state. They are in a calm state, and they laugh freely and gurgle and interact, and they seek interaction. And a lot of our joy is as a collective, as a community, as a culture, as a family. We have in our own home a kind of a joy level. So it's kind of like you can walk into an organization and sense that there's a lack of joy, or you can walk into a different place and sense that there is an abundance of joy. And I think that is one of the things that draws people to community, when they can get a sense of that, like, uplifting kind of sense. We tend to vibe with people that we feel are like us. So if we have a lack of joy, we might, there's a saying that says misery loves company. So the level of joy will actually determine where you feel comfortable. So with that natural joy that we have as children, what causes us, because this is what happened to us as children, to suppress it or to subdue it or to stop, doing those spontaneous, happy, squealing, laughing, running, like those things that kids do naturally when they play. And even the playfulness is a part of that joy. And we tend to get this like heaviness that pulls us down, and responsibility and worry and all that kind of stuff. So as children, and if you're a parent, you'll relate to this from a parenting point of view, we tend to have had experiences in our childhood like, don't do that, sit down, stop wriggling, like be more quiet, and so there becomes this sense of like, it's not okay for me to be this person. And especially when we go to schools and stuff, like everybody sit down, everybody hands on our heads, everybody line up, everybody, shh, you over there, be quiet. And so we get this fear of criticism, rejection, punishment, humiliation, that cringe feeling in us, like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. And I actually had this at my son's sports carnival this morning. The teacher went, ready, set, and I was talking to Ollie and I was like, go. And she was like, no, I didn't say go. And I was like, I'm so sorry, that was me trying to manage my son, and the whole thing, like the kids just took off everywhere. So luckily I have pretty higher emotional resilience, and that kind of stuff doesn't really faze me. But essentially it's like the message is like, who am I to be wildly and passionately me? Who am I to express myself? It's where there is a necessity for some level of conformity, because there is things like consideration and taking turns, and you can't have everybody just like joyously being themselves all at the same time. But can you? Because when you think about, like, say, for example, when I went to Fiji, and you have like, a whole stack of, like, I don't know if I'm using the right word, but like Polynesian people all laughing and talking and clapping and singing and dancing. And so surely there is a place and a space and a time for us to have that freedom. And I went to a fundraiser the other night, and most of the people there would have been over 40 and even over 50, 60, 70. They opened up the dance floor, there was a band, and there was people that were in their 80s, and like I was looking around and there was like old men dancing and old ladies dancing, and they were you think, like, at what point, like if we were in a tribe around a fire, there'd be weekly, even daily opportunity for us to release that kind of like expression of ourselves. But in our community, a person in their 60s or 70s might not have an opportunity to even move to music for years even. I mean, I know there's been times where I haven't like had a dance floor opportunity in years, and that's the kind of expression that brings us joy, to like move and express freely and dance like no one's watching, sing like no one's listening, all that kind of stuff. And that's how we get more joy. But in our lives, we get into that, like, run on the treadmill kind of thing, like the little rats. And we tend to start to try and please others. As children, we learn, like, sit down, be quiet, whatever. And it's kind of like when you're a good girl, then, you please others, and then it makes you get that reward, like, so-and-so's so good. Or you get the hurt and the anger inside of you, and you start to believe that you're not good, and so that then causes like a rebellion in you. So there's like this whole identity shift, like instead of just being like naturally, there's like, snip a bit off here, push a bit in there, hammer that down, and you kind of mold this new version of yourself, which is not really how you were intrinsically developed or created in the beginning. And it's like wearing a pair of shoes that's not quite a good fit. Eventually your feet kind of mold into that shape of that shoe. I know my mother had like pointy shoes from wearing shoes that were pointed in the 50s, and it can be uncomfortable, and it can be painful, and it can cause our joy to be suppressed and depressed. And when we feel depressed, that's completely a lack of that connection to our own true sense of joy. So each time we bang and mold and push and force and trim a bit off ourselves and comply and, shadow ourselves and keep closed and down, and we're fragmenting who we are. We're denying a part of ourselves. That I went for this kahuna massage, and she said, as I'm moving through the massage, she says, very interactive, and you can, call out or sing or cry or move your arms, whatever. And I was like, that's not, like, that feels so awkward, awkward. But I mean, if no one was watching and there was just complete freedom, I could be like, woo, massage me. But we kind of like hold back, and it's like we take on that observer role, like, I'm here getting massaged. And I've done this even when I've been having therapy with people. It's like, oh, what's this person doing? What's this person saying? And I'm in the shutdown, like, in my box, and I'm not getting the benefit out of that, because joy is like openness. When you are joyful, you are open and willing and unrestrained, and the energy flows in you and through you. And that is, if you've met people that exude joy, radiate joy, they're so lovely to be around, because it almost gives you permission to be more joyful yourself. And when we have this fractionation, this shutdown, this denial of parts of ourselves, and we're worrying, like, what will someone else say? What will someone else think? How am I being perceived? Am I going to be rejected? Am I not good enough? Or how will I compare to others? Or that kind of thing. Then that joy is missing. And when our joy is missing, what happens is we start to seek it. Not consciously maybe, but there's a part of us that goes, you know what? I need something. There's some part of me that needs something. And so we go for dopamine boosting things. Like, dopamine boosting things are reward things, and that can be food, that can be social media, that can be gambling, it can be alcohol, it could even be work. But whatever it is, it's always going to come at a cost, because that's not a natural joy. That's a stimulated dopamine response. And then there's judgment. Judgment just robs you of joy, and that comparison, because it's like that fear. And what does social media actually do? It makes us feel inadequate, because you're always going to see someone who's younger, smarter, taller, older, bigger, shorter, somethinger, that has that better online presence, that better photo, that more happy family in nicer clothes. And like I've seen people that I'm friends with, but also like people that my daughter went to school with, say, for example, where you look at it and you go, that just looks picture perfect. And that's why there's that saying, something is picture perfect, because in the picture it's perfect, but you don't know what's going on in the background. And even though we all know that, it's really hard to get that into your unconscious, because I actually know people where I'm like standing face to face with them and I'm like, this is you and this is, I know you. And then I see them online and I'm like, who's that? That's nothing like the person I know in real life. But yet my mind thinks, oh, that's amazing. She looks so good. Even though I know I've got the two comparisons. So imagine when you don't even have the real life version in front of you, that it can be quite confronting to see all this perfection in front of you. So there's three A's that I talk about, which are adequate, acceptable, and able. And when we feel, or we have learned in some way in our lives, during this fragmented, shutdown, denial process, that we are inadequate, that we are unacceptable, or that we are not able or not capable, none of this was there when we were born. It all got programmed in. That is what's robbing our joy. That's what's stopping us from dancing and singing and laughing and running and jumping and being wild. We're too busy in this like down regulated state, and it's because of other people's displeasure in us. It's because our caregivers, our people we attach to when we're young, our leaders, our peers, our other people gave us negative information about our expression of who we are for whatever reason, whether it was because society demanded it, or we were in a classroom, or because mum had 6 kids, or because mum was too stressed, or because our parents both worked, or whatever reason, someone wasn't able to cope with who we naturally were. And perhaps we were told that you are too much. You are too much to deal with. You are too much to handle. You are too much work. You are a burden, whatever it is. But you are a powerful entity. You are an adaptable, flexible, powerful entity. And the only thing, we have self-awareness. Now, that is what differentiates us from, say, a tree or a plant or a dog or a cat, or where I'm assuming here, but we actually have the ability to observe ourselves, to be able to be self-aware. That's something a computer does not have, is self-awareness. And with that self-awareness, there is actually unlimited potential, and the self-awareness actually blocks us. It's kind of like a double-edged sword, because without self-awareness, we wouldn't be able to actually direct and decide what it is that we want to move towards and do. We would be just reactive. We wouldn't have that responsiveness. However, it's also the thing that stops us from reaching our unlimited potential, because we've got that double-edged sword, the judgment part, like, oh, what if you fail? What if you are not accepted? What if this? What if that? You already know how to be happy. You know how to be purely, ultimately joyful, but you are subscribing. And just like all of us, and we do this to a degree. So I might have like a $2 subscription. I used to have like a $50 subscription. Maybe you've got like a $100 lifetime subscription, but you can cancel that subscription to all this stuff, this heaviness, this fear, this worry, this judgment, this whatever. You can cancel that subscription and bring back the truth of who you are. And that's all about knowing, who am I? That stuff's not working for you. If you are not feeling joyful, then all of that stuff's not working for you. And you just haven't realized who you are and how powerful you are and what you are actually made of. Because if you think about it, if you have an understanding about frequency and energy, then the heavier the frequency, the more like matter it is. And we are not solid. We are actually energetic beings, and the lighter and higher the frequency, the more closer to our truth truth of who we are and our truth source is we become. If you look at the Hawkins scale of consciousness, if you get down to anger, fear, blame, criticism, condemnation, etc., that's very heavy. If you become up to, acceptance and love and all that kind of stuff, and becoming part of the universal truth, God, eternity, that kind of thing, that's the higher. So happiness is not out there. It is in here. It is part of the truth of who you are. That's why we talk about self-love, loving ourselves. That's part of that energetic balance. And there is not going to be some situation or circumstance or person that is going to bring you joy. It's not going to be because you have a person who loves you, or it's not going to be because you don't have a person that loves you. It's not going to be because you have a particular job or a home or a car or friends or any of that stuff. In fact, there was one moment in my life where I was at rock bottom. Everything in my life was broken, and I was focusing inward heavily. I mean, I was doing the work. I was like shoveling, and I was driving to work one day, and I actually found that I connected to that pure joy. And that day in my life was surreal. There were synchronicities that you would not even be able to imagine. My whole heart space connected to my brain, heart-brain connection was wired. My elevation of joy was there, and it was just like being a tuning fork. I had to hit the right note and feel that in me, and that meant that I couldn't be passive. I could not be the victim in my own life. I could not be the victim in the story. I had to be the creator in my life and my journey and my joy. And so in that moment, and I teach how to do this. It's actually very simple, but it's affirmations are not enough. People talk about, affirmations, and they talk about a whole stack of other things about, the law of attraction, etc. But that's not enough. You actually have to create experiences, and I teach people how to do that. So your emotions, if you are not happy, your emotions are in a state of dysregulation. You're not connecting and processing the negative energies that come up with anger and fear and hurt and betrayal, etc. And they have become inflamed in your body, and it's affecting and driving. This is what happens to us. We start to be motivated by avoiding the things that we are not able to cope with. And it's like our emotions become infected, they become inflamed and festering within us, and we haven't learned how to process them. We haven't learned to sit with them and allow them to move through us and out of us, and to then, instead of moving away from these negative emotions and thinking that our lives are driven by the negativity and the pain and the hurt and the fear and all that sort of stuff, instead finding within us this joy and allowing these energies to balance out. And so we become so fragmented, so dysregulated, and that then is the heaviness that holds us down from being the truth of who we are, that joyful self. And like all things, this just needs to be cleared out and released, and for sunlight to pour back into our lives. It's like, a cold, cloudy, dark day is instantly gone the minute the sun comes up again and those clouds just blow away. So I create content to help people be able to connect into their joy, into the truth of who they are, find that love, that peace. And as you resonate more and clear out the things in your life that have been programmed into you that don't work, and be able to allow more of the truth of who you are to shine through in your life, and be able to have and do the things that you probably would love to be doing more of, that would bring you and enhance the joy that you can already find within yourself. Like my channel, please. Subscribe to my channel, like my posts, support and connect with me. I am doing this to light up the world, and I'd love you to help me light up the world together. Have a beautiful day. Whoops.